everybody, I'm LZ Cathcart from the Summery Umbrella, and that's where I blog about rustic inspired home decor such as signs and do-yourself projects that are easy and affordable to make. So let's get started. So what I wanted to go over today is I have a new spring sign collection, and as you can see some of them back here, and I was going to show you how I make my signs. I like them to be very precise, clean, and consistent, kind of a perfectionist. And so I was going to show you, first off, this collection that's new is a collaboration with my dear friend Bonnie Christine from GoingHomeToRoost.com. She's amazing. We worked together on these designs and the quotes and everything, and didn't she do such a great job? I am absolutely so excited for this collection. So I want to show you, first off, one of the ways that either one of us will start off our designs is with either a sketch pad, like for instance this one. This is for a sign that I'm going to be making for an ebook that I'm coming out with in March. And you can also use your iPad. Procreate is a really great app to use. And you can start off, for instance, in your sketchbook, pencil, color it in, scan it in, and go into Adobe Illustrator and turn it into a vector. I know that's a really fast kind of instructions for that part, but there's some really great classes out there to show you exactly how to turn that into a vector. Now, why do you need your design turned into a vector? You need it so you can put it into your cutting machine so you're able to make your design. So for instance, once I put this into a vector, I put it into my cutting machine, I like to use the Silhouette Cameo. It'll allow me to cut exactly on all the edges. So after you get that all fixed, you have your vinyl ready to go. One of the biggest parts about making a sign, especially the way that I like to make them very clean, smooth, not distressed on the sign whatsoever, is I like to start with 1/2 inch cabinet grade plywood. And the reason I like to do that is that it comes smooth. I can get Lowe's to cut it for me, or my very talented husband, and that way I can know when I put the vinyl on there, it's going to be able to stick right to the surface and I won't get paint underneath it. Do you guys ever have that problem where you can't figure out, you're like, why is it getting underneath the vinyl? It's because your surface isn't flat, or the paint is getting underneath with spray paint. You're getting too much spray paint or too much paint on your brush. So we'll go into that a little bit more. So first off, once I have my board and I'm ready, I like to make sure with a 4-inch paintbrush that I've never used before, for paint that is, I like to kind of just brush it off and make sure that it is completely free of any kind of dust, dirt, anything. Then I take a paper towel and I take a paper towel that's damp with water and then just kind of dry it off with that as well. So if there's anything that my brush missed, I make sure that I can get that. So after that step, this board right here, I've already had one layer of paint on it. And this is another key step to making sure that your board is going to have a very smooth surface that your vinyl will stick to and won't peel back the paint. So after you have one layer of paint on here, you let it dry for at least an hour. You go back through and you look for any kind of bumps. Now this one isn't too bad. If I can see, I don't really see too many over here. I'm not sure if you can see that. But what I like to use is a sanding pad 220. And what I do is I just lightly kind of scuff the areas that I don't like and get rid of that. So when I go to do that second layer, I won't have to worry about trying to get up 2 different layers of that dust or whatever that particle is. So after I have that all done, a little bit here, yeah. So you'll see that it's a little scuffed up, but don't worry about it. You're gonna be able to put your paint right over that and you're not gonna have any issues. So the next step, what I like to use is a foam roller. This one is 9 inches. You could also use a 4-inch roller, this one over here, but I've noticed when you use a smaller roller, you'll kind of have these lines. Have you guys ever had that problem before? Like when you paint a wall, you'll kind of have like a little strip and then you have to constantly go over it 4 or 5 times. That drives me nuts. So that's why I like to use the larger one, and see how, like if you look right here, you can see that it's going to go over just once or twice. So I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. I usually use the Walmart brand paint, to be honest. for the signs, the reason I do that is because I use so much of it. It's just the cheapest way to get the most bang for my buck, and it's a really good paint for the signs. So I use interior satin. This particular color, I call it charcoal, but I think Walmart calls it, let's see, charcoal troubled sky. It's gorgeous. I just take a paintbrush, make sure there's no hair or anything on it. Move this back. Can you see everything okay? Okay, so I'm going to just take a few swipes through here, not too much. Like I said, with paint, you don't need a lot. You want to make sure that you're doing thin layers. Move this over. Okay, and then just a few quick swipes. If you notice any bubbling, that's okay with the foam roller. It's going to go down. I swear it doesn't normally take me this long. I'm just being very picky. So as you can see, that was really fast. How long did that take me? Maybe like 5 seconds, 7. And it looks clean. There's no marks on there. And then I'm gonna let it dry for about 2 to 3 days minimum. This is key. A lot of people that have problems with vinyl sticking to their boards, it's because they don't let the paint set or cure. You want to make sure minimum 2 to 3 days. I actually let mine cure for about a week or so, just because I don't want to have any issues. And during like the summer months where it's really humid, like in the south, oh my goodness, you can have even more issues with that. So you really want to make sure that you're in a cooler area where it's not going to have a lot of moisture, to make sure that it can dry completely even. So I'm just going to move this over here. Then, after you have your 2 coats, you can do the same process with the sandpaper, the 220. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, but won't I have to re-sand this, or won't I have to repaint it again if I scuff it up? Well, yes and no. The reason I say that is because if you sand it too much, like if you find a really big bubble, then yes, you're going to have to repaint it. But if it's just something small, like just a little bump, don't worry about it, because you're going to be able to cover that up with a finishing spray later on, or your design might even cover that scuff too. So don't worry about that part right now. So my handy dandy little vinyl stencil that I was telling you about that you cut out from whatever cutting machine that you use, I like to cut mine out prior to, or have many on hand. Since I do so many signs, I like to do lots of these and pull out the pieces first, put the backing back on so I have it available later on. So what I'm going to show you today is kind of some tips and tricks on how to take such an intricate design. Oh, sorry. And I'm going to show you basically how to put this onto your sign and have the least amount of problems. So I've kind of gotten to the point where I take off my backing altogether and put it on. But if you're just starting off, I'm sure that's not very easy. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull back your backing just a little bit, just to kind of, show about 2 inches. And before I get ahead of myself, I want to tell you also a quick tip that actually my husband taught me. With these stencils, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to easily line them up on your board. One of the hardest parts is, so you have your stencil and you're like, okay, where do I put it? Now this board is obviously a lot bigger than my stencil, and that's just my own preference. But an easy way to change that, or an easy way to fix that problem, is if you put in your stencil machine, you put the exact measurements of how big you want the sign. You put a square around it, so when you pull it out, it's easy for you to just go, oh yeah, right here, just corner to corner, that's exactly how I need to, how to line it up. And it helps tremendously for lining all your stencils up. So I'm going to just take the 2 corners of my stencil and line it up to this board. And as you notice on this other side, it's kind of, the vinyl wasn't cut completely correctly for whatever reason, but I can see just enough right here at the top that it's lined up, okay? So I'm just gonna take my fingers and just lightly push down and then push it back over. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna be slowly pulling. Can you see that? You can slowly pull the white backing off as you push it onto here like this. Okay, now with an intricate design, sometimes you gotta be careful and go slow so you don't lose some of these inner pieces from the letters. So, and when they stick to the backing, that's okay. Just push them back under. No big deal. Okay, so now that I have this onto the sign, I'm gonna take my squeegee, and as you can see, I've used a lot. So it's a little bowed. But I like to push it down onto my sign very hard, so I make sure that this vinyl stays on here as much as possible. And then I take one of the corners, and then I slowly, with one finger, or one thumb, excuse me, I hold down the vinyl. So I'm gonna just keep pulling on my transfer paper and just slowly kind of weave it, or I shouldn't say weave, just kind of pull it alongside that top, and just use both. You're gonna definitely need both hands to kind of hold down that vinyl and then to pull on that transfer paper. This has been the easiest way I can find. Now, when you have a design that's not as intricate, it's usually not this difficult. It usually is a lot easier. I wanted to show you this one because it can be done. It's very intricate, but it can be accomplished. You can, you know, make it this detailed, and you can make a sign from it. Yay, we are almost there, almost there. Okay, there we go, all done. Now, what I was telling you earlier was that sometimes you'll find pieces that don't turn out very well. Like, see this bubble right here? This particular tool we got at Harbor Freight. There's like a set of them. Do you remember what they're called, honey?
Dental pick set.
Dental picks. I like this particular one instead of buying the Silhouette Cameo or Cricut or one of the other cutters. They have kits that you can buy, but they're usually plastic. Maybe not the whole thing, but I'm usually rough on my tools. So I like to use the metal ones to kind of help me fix any kind of mistakes. Like right here, do you see how it's kind of turned over? I can go through here and, wow, it's really under there, huh? Hopefully I won't rip it while I'm showing you how to do this, right? How embarrassing. Okay, there it is. So you can just kind of pull that back and then smooth it down. See how there's just a little bit of a bubble there, but it's not bad. With your nail and your tool, you can push it back down. Okay, so now that we have this done, what I'm not gonna be able to do the airbrush, which I typically do, just because I'd have to open up all the windows, use a ventilator. It's just harder to show you and be able to talk to you with that on. So I'm going to tell you a couple different ways you could do this. I used to use spray paint. Over here you can see kind of my collection. I used to use Liquitex, and I actually used it on inside, but as always, you should always make sure you're in a ventilated area. The reason I like Liquitex if I'm going to use a spray paint is because it's water-based. That means there's not going to be as many fumes, and they have tons of colors. If you go to Dick Blick, for instance, you can get it for I think half the price. Whereas if you go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby, it can be, they can be more like $15, $16. So they can be a little pricey if you go somewhere like that. Well, anyways, I like that. I like their brand, and I like using it. But it can get under your stencil a little bit easier. So if you're going to be doing some kind of a reclaimed wood or something like that where it doesn't have to look as perfect, the spray paint is the way to go. Now, like I said before, I use an airbrush now. So, what is it? The Pache? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
That's the brand I use that I got on Amazon. And my husband was very, very nice, and he put together this handy dandy little area for me. And it's gonna hook up to an air compressor. We're actually up on stilts. Where we live is a flood zone, so the air compressor is actually underneath my studio where I always work. And the air compressor would hook up over here. I'll show you. That's fast. So it actually would just hook up right here. And of course, it's not even on. So it makes it really easy for me just to move around my sign. So I would just kind of, do one of these things. Now there's no real way that I airbrush. Like, how sometimes people are like, oh no, you have to start in the middle, you have to start on the sides. Honestly, I don't really have a method for doing that. For this particular sign, there's actually two colors. If you see here, all the words are in like a lighter almond color, and these outside, it's more of a, oh, there's the one that I missed. That's okay. It's more of like a grayish brown suede color. Oh yes, right, it's right back there. So I like to tape off the areas that I'm going to, the sides I taped off first. I did those, and then once I got done with that tape, I just use a painter's tape. Then I tape off the insides, and then I do the other section. Now, airbrushing, the lacquer paint that I use is actually from Mackenzie's. Mike is a taxidermist, and when we first started trying different methods for the signs, he introduced me to lacquer paint. And it's kind of funny because ever since then, I just kind of like the taxidermy lacquer paint the best. So I continue to use it, just in case you're wondering what kind I use. So lacquer paint dries super fast. The whole point of this is that since it dries so fast, it doesn't get underneath your stencil as easily. So when you pull it back, you're gonna have a very clean lines. So you don't have to worry about it leaking underneath. Now granted, once again with paint, you wanna make sure you do thin layers. So I have one that's done, I think I did just the other day, that still has the stencil on here. So this is what it's gonna look like after you get done painting. And I'm gonna kind of show you exactly how to take it off. I'm sure some of you can notice too how this white doesn't look as dark as maybe you would think it needs to be. But when it's on a charcoal or a black background, yeah, it's amazing how little paint that you need. Like for instance, this little container will last me months. Okay, so let's get started with pulling this back. Once again, I just use my, my little pick and my fingernails. So I'm gonna start at the corner, just because it's easier, and just slowly peel it back. Now if you look here, see how clean those lines are? Isn't that gorgeous? That's with airbrushing. I don't have any kind of drips or any paint going underneath it. You're gonna see that some of the vinyl sticks. And you know what, that's okay. I like to take the bulk of my vinyl off, and then I go in with my pick and I just get rid of the rest of it. Sometimes I'll admit that I get a little anxious and I start ripping all this stuff off. But you need to, remember to take it slow. That way you don't, you're less likely to have any kind of peeling happen. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your tool and you're just gonna kind of push on the vinyl. See how I'm not sure how close you are, but see how like when I push it, you can kind of see it move? That's what you want. And you kind of wanna make like a little hole in there and to pull it back. Now, if you scratch your sign, it's okay, I promise. You can fix that with a little tiny, like a toothpick, for instance, with those little lines, or a paintbrush, depending on how steady your hand is. I'm not always that steady, I'll be honest. Okay, so that's what you're gonna do, is you're just gonna pull apart each one of these itty bitty little things. So you have it all done, then you just cut it to where you want. Maybe you even want it to look like this, just depending on what kind of design you're using, and then you can frame it up. When we put on our frames, we use fence paneling, and then we actually stain it. What is it, Minwax? Basically, I like to use a water-based stain because one, I can use it inside when it's cold, and I don't have to worry about it stinking out my studio because it's a smaller space. But I like to use like a pure black stain, and then I water it down when I dunk in my fence piece or my fence panel pieces that are cut down, okay? I just have noticed that that gives it the most consistent and weathered look to it. You can contact me. You can either go to the blog and go to contact, or if you have a pen and pencil close by, or you can type it in, LZ as in zebra at the Summery, SUMMERY, umbrella.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to hear from you. Thanks so much.